Former President Donald Trump and 5 of his rivals are 1 poll away from qualifying for the debate stage. Cassie Smedile, Vice President, Coin, and former Executive Director of America Rising PAC, and Kevin Walling, former Biden campaign surrogate. Great to see you both. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty before they step up and America gets to see them take each other on. Cassie, what should we be looking for right now? Are we concentrating on the New Hampshire polling? What pops to you?
Well, I think the New Hampshire poll is reflective of voters who are paying attention. They are seeing these candidates on the ground. They're surely seeing the ads on their local TVs. And so they're really tuned in, and they're getting a feel for what differentiates these candidates from one another, or just who they like better. And then, as you noted, the debate is going to be the first moment where the national voting audience is going to get that same opportunity. And that's where we're really going to start to see these polls crystallize how voters are feeling. But I got to say, we've got a great bench, any one of them better than President Biden. And that's the sentiment that's being captured by voters as the Republicans play out a great democratic process in our primary, unlike my friends on the left.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better than a hard decision, right? Just one real quick more bite of the apple with you, Cassie. And Kevin, I'm coming right to you. Should Donald Trump be on that debate stage?
Absolutely. Here's 2 reasons why. One, like I just said, this is really the first moment that people are going to have a chance to see everybody together and to really start to see the nuances between not just their positions, but how they would fight for the American people. If Donald Trump is doing as well as the polls seem to indicate and he seems to indicate, then why not go there and really cement why he is the best candidate to represent Republicans in the general? I think the American voters would love to see the full slate of candidates who qualify on the stage.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen an election season that doesn't have his voice in it.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, on a debate stage. I mean, he is popular corn type material right there. But you know what? Some argue on the other side, and so this will require, Kevin, a little bit of a neutrality strategist hat that you wear so well. On the other side of the aisle, the same argument could be made about President Biden not wanting to debate Bobby Kennedy Jr., Marianne Williamson, so on and so forth. And that field could get interesting, too, as they make up right now about almost a third of popularity on that side of the ticket. That why get in and make a mistake? And maybe some in defense of Donald Trump at this point, why get into that primary debate and make a mistake or not do what you want to do? Your thoughts?
Well, Harris, it's a really interesting point, and why open yourself up to attacks? I think, you've seen Chris Christie, since he's announced, really center his whole campaign on trying to tear down Donald Trump, and he's likely to qualify for that debate in New Hampshire. But to Cassie's point, I think the former president, should show up, should debate his rivals for this. The interesting thing, I think, in that polling, not necessarily is the drop that I see, the little drop that I see with Donald Trump standing, but the rise of Tim Scott, who is a candidate that I'm actually, as a Democrat, most afraid of. This is a guy who's won, in the Deep South, has worked with Democrats in the past, has a strong record to run on, can, kind of refocus that compassionate conservatism that we saw from George W. Bush in the 2000s. And he's at 8% in a state like New Hampshire, which is overwhelmingly white. And he's doing very well in Iowa as well. I credit some of his appearances with Sean Hannity on those town halls and things like that. And the fact that his PAC is just now announced a $40 million investment in those early states. You're going to see those numbers rise, and that, as a Democrat, is what I'm most afraid of.
Yeah, let's talk about that money for a second, because that broke just this morning. Kevin, in terms of the money coming in, DeSantis raised a little bit more than Donald Trump, but he is bleeding cash right now. What happens in those campaigns? You've got experience on that. What are they spending money on? And that $40 million for Tim Scott makes a huge impact.
It makes a huge impact. And again, Harris, to your point, this is going to be the first election that we've seen in a long time where primary candidates have this large support of super PACs. So you see the super PAC behind Ron DeSantis, Never Back Down, that is spending a lot of money. In fact, hiring field staff for the first time. Usually that's a function of the campaign, the hard side of the campaign. Now this is on the IE side in terms of coordination. So this is going to have a major effect in terms of propping up a lot of candidates that likely would have dropped out based on money issues early on.
All right. Well, we are about a month away from that first GOP debate. It will be.
I can't wait.
Priority
I'm
viewing.
Tuning in.
Definitely. All right. Let's move to this. More Democratic panic, it would appear, over a potential third-party run from No Labels. And Democrat turned independent Joe Lieberman is the founding chairman of that. And he said this is about when they may name a candidate.
We know that we're probably not going to be able to make a sensible decision about this until next year, certainly after the Super Tuesday primaries in March. When the field becomes clear, then we'll decide whether we have a constructive role to play by running a bipartisan unity ticket.
A new op-ed lays it out this way. Quote, Trump's support is an inch wide and a mile deep. His supporters are dedicated, but there aren't as many of them. But Biden's support is a mile wide and an inch deep. Millions of Americans voted for him because he wasn't Trump. And many of them could be persuaded to vote for someone else, such as a reasonable third-party candidate who also isn't Trump. If Trump has a chance of winning, a viable third-party candidate is likely his only path to victory. Cassie.
All signs point to this being a spoiler for Joe Biden. This is a problem. Democrats aren't really interested in him. And also, it's a problem that Democrats aren't having a Democratic primary process. And I think that frustration is spilling over into this no labels discussion as well.
Yeah, you know what I'm curious about? I mean, Joe Biden and Joe Manchin, boy, they had some tough moments around that Inflation Reduction Act, as I like to scare quote it. And really, Manchin came out on the short end of the stick. And he was on this very program, and I tried to tell him, you know, you're not going to get what you're asking for in energy to really, you know, extend out a lifeline to coal in your state. And what happened with all that climate change money? Well, we saw it. Cassie, real quick, and then Kevin to you.
Yeah, Joe Manchin continues to get the short end of the stick in these negotiations, and yet he still votes with Democrats. So make no mistake, he's a Democrat. So even if no labels tries to take his label off, it's still a Democrat. It still comes up maybe the short end of the stick now for Joe Biden, should they choose Joe Manchin as their preferred third-party candidate.
Kevin, no labels.
Listen, Joe Manchin can make a serious difference where he is in the United States Senate. He's got $10 million in the bank. He can run a competitive campaign and win in West Virginia. That is what he should do. I helped launch No Labels back in 2010 as the first national political director for the organization. I think they need to return to their roots, take on extremism in party primaries. Don't get involved in a spoiler effort, which is likely going to happen. No third-party candidate has ever won. The last time a third-party candidate won any electoral votes was George Wallace 55 years ago. We see Ross Perot, Jill Stein. They're all spoilers, and that's what No Labels will be.
You helped launch No Labels, and now that third-party push has got $70 million.
And we don't even know who's funding this effort either.
They want to get on the ballots all across the U.S. We'll cover every inch of it. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
Thanks, Harris.